Welcome to NSL Unscripted, a national security law podcast, brought to you by the National Security Law Department at the U.S. Army's The Judge Advocate General's Legal Center and School. We bring you conversations and hot topics from NSL practitioners today, and hope you enjoy this episode. I'm Major Keoni Medici, one of the professors in the National Security Law Department, ADN, at the Judge Advocate General's Legal Center and School. We're excited to continue our outstanding professional development opportunity to our listeners in this third part of our series. We're going to hear from Colonel Eric Widmar, an experienced national security law practitioner, provide his thoughts on pursuing NSL assignments. Colonel Widmar currently serves as the Staff Judge Advocate of United States Central Command, a unified combatant command. Prior to that assignment, he served as the Principal Deputy Legal Counsel to the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Colonel Widmar, welcome, sir. We look forward to getting to hear your words of wisdom. And part of the reason, sir, we brought you on the show is we were recently inspired not only by your current work, but also by your contributions in the Army Lawyer. Your recent article co-authored Leadership That Empowers People. So thank you, sir, for your contributions not only to this podcast, but also to written scholarship. So first up, sir, as you think back on your career as a judge advocate, what specific NSL jobs did you have or pursue over other opportunities that helped lead you to where you are today?
Well, Keoni, thanks a lot for the opportunity. I really appreciate the venue that this provides to kind of talk with NSL practitioners throughout the JAG Corps. Two kind of foundational caveats before we get into this. Number one, I've never had a PPTO assignment. Okay. However, when I was serving as the Chief of Strategic Plans in the Strategic Initiatives Office, I did have a chance to work very closely with them on a lot of talent management initiatives. So, since we are going to be talking about NSL career opportunities and philosophies, understand that I was very fortunate to work closely with PPTO and kind of understand some of the principles and challenges that they go through in the assignment cycle. So that's one caveat. The second caveat is, you asked specifically about NSL jobs that I've had or other opportunities that I have pursued. The bottom line is the last time I got my number one choice on my assignment preference sheet was 12 years ago at the grad course. I have had 8 assignments since then, none of which were number one on my list. Frankly, 7 of the 8 were not even on my list. So I kind of lay that as groundwork to understand that, to your question about specific NSL jobs, there are a lot of different avenues to success. And when I say success, that really depends on your own personal definition of success. I think the reason why, or one of the reasons why you guys invited me here was because I'm the staff judge advocate for Combatant Command, a 4-star Combatant Command, which I think, has been a goal for a long time. I do think in the Joint Force, that's kind of the pinnacle of a legal job. If that is defined as success, understand that there are lots of different routes to get there. For me personally, I'll just focus on 4 assignments really quickly that I thought were kind of pivotal to my development to get me to where I'm at. The first was, of course, my coming out of the grad course, I went to the 75th Ranger Regiment, and this was in 2010 at the height of the surge in Afghanistan. And the reason why that was so foundational is as a very young major, it exposed me to the larger national security structure and the interagency and multinational partners and allies. So yes, we were engaged in, direct action operations every single night, about 300 operations a month, heavy detention operations. But that, the tactical aspect of it wasn't the biggest benefit of that assignment. It was the exposure to the interagency. I actually had a commander that was very strategic thinking. He took us all up to D.C., took all the field grades up to D.C., so that we, on a TDY trip, so that we could go and engage with the front offices and leadership in the FBI, in the CIA, in the NSA, in the NGA, you name it, right, on the national security staff. And so as a very young major, having just come out of captain, sometimes we think that the world revolves around the brigade or the division or the corps. And so as a young major, to be exposed to that much larger perspective, I think was fundamental. The second job, and frankly, this, you probably would not consider this a national security law job, was the Chief of Administrative and Civil Law at U.S. Army Pacific. It's a 4-star component command and the largest combatant command in terms of geography and population. But what the biggest takeaway from there was year 2 of that job, the JAG Corps unfortunately was not able to fill the Chief of National Security Law at U.S. Army Pacific. So as a senior major, my staff judge advocate at the time, Colonel Rick Martin, came to me and said, hey, I know you're got your hands full with ad and civ law, but I now need you to take over 205 jobs. And the only way you're going to be able to do that is if you delegate until it hurts and then delegate some more. And so that job really helped me to understand and test and implement processes and procedures to delegate without abdicating, right? Delegating, still wrapping my arms around everything that was going on in this 4-star command, yet empowering my teammates and still having the systems and the processes to stay plugged in and understand what was going on, not just wash my hands of it, which unfortunately I think sometimes people confuse delegation with abdication. So that was a critical leadership experience for me. The third one I think was my job as the Chief of Strategic Plans at OTJAG, because it really forced me to focus on executive communication. And how do you take massive amounts of data and information and condense them into a 5x8 card, bulletized, so that it's useful for a 3-star judge advocate who's about to engage in whatever the activity was at the time. So that executive comms skill set is one that can be developed, and I was first really exposed to that in that job, and I'm grateful for that. And I think the last one that I'd focus on is my last assignment, the principal deputy for the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, or chairman's legal as we call it. And really that was learning speed and how do you get faster, because at that level, I mean, the chairman is the senior military advisor to the president. And so often issues that we were dealing with, you didn't have the luxury of time. And so how do you manage information? How do you do knowledge management very fast? And how do you coordinate? How do you build relationships horizontally, vertically, to be able to get the information you need, accurate information that you need immediately? That was an incredible baptism of fire, if you will. I'm grateful for it because, frankly, all of these skills from all of those jobs I employ daily in my current job as the SJ for CENTCOM.
That's fantastic, sir, and really leads us to what we're looking at next is in your current position with the duties and responsibilities. Explain for our younger judge advocates who may be interested in pursuing that path to a COCOM SJA, how it is to practice NSL at that level.
Right. Well, I think it goes back to what I experienced at Chairman's Legal, and that is, the practice at a combatant command, a 4-star combatant command, operational headquarters, warfighting command, the purpose is to solve problems. Okay? That's period, full stop. Your job as a legal advisor is to solve problems. It's not just to say what the law is and finish there. It's understanding, it's applying critical thinking, developing relationships across the staff so that you know what other people are working through. Oftentimes, as legal advisors, we're kind of the connective tissue with many members of the staff. Because we are involved in so many things, we may be aware of issues that other staff sections who are kind of siloed aren't aware of, and we have a unique opportunity to bring those people together to problem solve. But I go back to my LC experience, and I think the biggest difference in practicing law at the combatant command, again, is speed. And I'll quickly tell a short story here. So Larry Fitzgerald, do you know him?
Is that a football player?
Yes.
Larry Fitzgerald,
yes,
sir?
yes.
Yeah.
Wide receiver for the Arizona Cardinals, future Hall of Famer, widely regarded as one of the best wide receivers in NFL history. So bottom line is, very accomplished. He was the runner-up to the Rookie of the Year in 2004. Had won all kinds of awards in college and things like that. Only played in college 2 years and then was selected third overall in the NFL draft. So when they came to him after he was selected behind Ben Roethlisberger, Rookie of the Year in 2004, they said, hey, what's the biggest difference between football in college and the pros? And without hesitation, he said, speed. Everybody has to do the fundamentals, the blocking, the tackling. Everybody has to do that in college, and everybody has to do it in the pros. The difference is, in the pros, everybody does it really fast. And I've always thought that that was an excellent analogy for a legal office, that the good legal offices do all the fundamentals, the blocking, the tackling, the research, the writing, the communication, the coordination. Good legal offices do that, but the true pros do it fast. So how do you do that? And really, to me, it boils down to people and process. It's the relationships you develop to be able to get the information you need, whether it's the factual information or the actual legal perspective or rule, right? And that includes vertical relationships with OGC and Chairman's Legal. It also boils down to process. How do you organize vast amounts of information? How do you retain information? How do you flatten comms and share information so that you never spend 30 minutes trying to find that one memo from the Secretary of Defense, right? And wasting that time, that you've got information postured in such a way that it's easily accessible. So I think that's the biggest difference of practicing at a combatant command is speed. But those are skills that can be developed, and they can be developed right now in any job that you're in.
Sir, I had the pleasure of watching West Virginia University beat the Pitt Panthers with Larry Fitzgerald back when my nephew was born. But that's I think an awesome story, sir, to share and to emphasize that critical point of the practice area. How pivotal! We've heard a little bit through what you've shared, sir, over your previous assignments. Some of those that were more broadening opportunities, more on the professional development for leadership skills of managing an office. But to that younger population of judge advocates, how critical is it to pursue a joint service billet?
That's a great question, and I would refer you to the Army's own mission statement. The Army's own mission statement is to deploy, fight, and win our nation's wars. Most of the time we stop there, but that's not the entire mission statement. The entire mission statement is to deploy, fight, and win our nation's wars by providing ready, prompt, and sustained land dominance by Army forces across the full spectrum of conflict as part of the joint force. The JAG Corps understands this same principle. When you look at the own JAG Corps' vision statement for JAG Corps 2030, the JAG Corps 2030 will be the most highly trained, inclusive, and values-based team of trusted legal Army professionals who excel in our Army and joint force missions. So if you believe both of those authoritative statements, it's very important to have experience in both the Army and the joint force. If you go to JAGPub 1-1 and just do a Control F and look for joint force, it is replete with references to the Army and the joint force. Very rarely do you see the Army alone. It's the Army and the joint force. So I think that people should pursue opportunities in the joint force. And when I say the joint force, that's more broad, and I think hope that we'll talk a little bit about this when we talk about specific assignments. That's broader than just the joint force. It's also jobs that give you exposure to the larger national security structure, the interagency, multinational partners, and again, I hope we'll talk about that. But to get a little more granular, my joint assignments, I think, have given me experience and exposure to that larger national security structure that my traditional Army assignments were not able to give me. So again, interaction with the national security staff, understanding how senior leaders think and process information and how that affects how I communicate information. Those opportunities are present in the joint force because, of course, my combatant commander, his boss is the Secretary of Defense, and my combatant commander already has briefed the president multiple times. And so that process of helping him prepare for that back to executive comms and understanding all the different variables that go into a conversation like that, that joint force experience gives you that. Having said that, my Army experience has given me opportunities that the joint force could not. So most joint force offices are actually pretty small. I am authorized one attorney per service. And so the leadership opportunities are very direct and personal. You don't get an opportunity to exercise organizational leadership. The Army provides those examples. The Army, I have had those, been fortunate enough to have those experiences at 3rd Infantry Division and elsewhere, where large offices, where you've got to work with a large group of individuals that have, different desires, different interests, different motivations. That's a very different skill set, is leading a diverse group of individuals like that. And I think the Army provides that to judge advocates in a way that the Joint Force can't. And similarly, I think that the Army often provides an opportunity to really develop deep subject matter expertise that the Joint Force certainly gives you that opportunity, but I think the Army does it differently because we deal with such a large array of issues. And I think the national security law arena is becoming broader and broader as things evolve. I think we get a lot of the benefit of our Army experience that. And we get a larger, broader cross-section of legal experience through our Army experience. And frankly, there's a joke in the Joint Force that we spell joint ARMY because we are the largest service. And oftentimes in joint assignments, we have the largest contingent there. So understanding how the Army operates procedurally, functionally, 15-6s, a lot of what you do is investigations, understanding how to organize that and execute it well. Because if you screw it up at the Combatant Command or in the Joint Force, well, the next level is the Secretary of Defense, right? So the Army gives you those deeper, I think, subject matter expert experiences that are so necessary to being successful in the Joint Force.
Thank you, sir. To take a break from, thinking about pursuing the Joint Service Billet and exploring those opportunities, to you, sir, what's been your favorite, your most rewarding, most interesting NSL assignment, and what did you like so much about it?
Well, some people may say I'm a masochist if by answering this way, but I do think it was my assignment at Chairman's Legal. It was incredibly demanding. My first year on the job was the last year of the Trump administration. My second year, obviously, was the first year of the Biden administration. And those were eventful times, very demanding. And frankly, I became a news junkie because literally listening to the news gave me a hint as to what I was going to be working on that day when I got into the office, depending on the issue. But so not only because there were real world opportunities to have an impact, of course, the chairman, again, is the president, the senior military advisor to the president. So being able to help him and prepare him as he engaged in those interactions was incredibly rewarding, incredibly demanding, but also very rewarding. So besides the subject matter that was so, interesting and dynamic, it's the people that I had to work with at LC. By statute, technically the services are supposed to send, quote, their most outstanding officers to the joint staff. Somehow I fell through the cracks and still made it, but I found it incredibly rewarding professionally and personally to work with that caliber of individuals, people who came from a wide and diverse background, all the services, including the Coast Guard, and that just really brought a different perspective to how to solve problems. And so it wasn't just, the fact that the Navy were experts in the law of the sea and things like that, but it was just the whole approach to solving problems. And again, I think that is one of the strengths of the joint environment, is that you do bring together diverse perspectives and experiences that in my mind only result in better problem solving because of the different perspectives that are brought to bear on it.
So what advice would you have for the range of assignments, 03 to 06, best NSL positions a judge advocate can pursue?
Remember my first caveat. I have never been assigned to PPTO, but candidly, I would refer everyone to JAGPub 11 Figure 7-3. So you figure 7-3 is a table that outlines national security law opportunities. I bring this up because, frankly, Colonel P.J. Perrone at the time, who was the chief of NSL, and when I was the chief of strat plans, I was able to work with him on this. And it wasn't just two guys in a back, smoke-filled room developing this list. Colonel Perrone cast a wide net to make sure there was a representative group that came together to discuss different NSL opportunities at grade to identify what are the jobs that give people the experiences necessary to succeed at the next level in terms of, some of the things that we talked about earlier on, opportunities to develop executive comms, opportunities to develop leadership, subject matter expertise, that versatility that is so necessary in the NSL community. It was a broad cross-section from the Joint Force, the Army, conventional special operations, E-ring assignments in the Pentagon, which are very important, interagency assignments, multinational assignments. So this list really, I think, is a great resource for officers interested in the practice of NSL, because it's not just my perspective, it is the collective perspective of a group of people, a wide and diverse group of people who have spent the majority of their careers practicing NSL.
Looking here, sir, for some words of advice to those younger judge advocates interacting with their career coaches, looking for mentors, navigating the assignment cycle. What advice do you have for them?
First of all, I'd say, I've been told for 24 years that you're your own best career manager. And I think there's a lot of truth to that, but people need to understand what that means. And it doesn't mean I want what I want, otherwise I'm taking my ball and going home. What it means is that you as an individual professional have an obligation to be educated and to understand what is the JAG Corps, what kind of officers and legal practitioners is the JAG Corps trying to develop. Be self-aware enough to know where are the gaps in your swing and pursue those opportunities to fill those gaps so that you can be a well-rounded, versatile expert that the JAG Corps is trying to create. There's really, in my mind, there's really no mysteries here. Again, go to JAGPub 1-1. It tells you what kind of officers and practitioners the JAG Corps is trying to develop. In terms of working with career managers, I would say be honest and be candid that PPTO needs information and TJAG and DJAG need information to make informed decisions. So I would not encourage people to be coy or to, think that they're engaged in some kind of Machiavellian game when it comes to the assignment cycle. You need to be candid and forthright, but you also need to have a plan. So again, I was very fortunate when I was at the Ranger Regiment. I had a senior JAG Corps mentor who shared with me his 10 to 15 year career plan. And this was a PowerPoint slide that brought together lots of different variables that come into play in the assignment cycle, right? So that includes what are your own personal objectives? So for example, for me, my personal objectives have remained consistent throughout my career, and that's to maintain work-life harmony, continue to serve as long as I can make a meaningful difference, and minimize moves during high school years so that my kids, could have some semblance of stability. So this PowerPoint, I built this PowerPoint based off what my mentor gave me, and it superimposed all these variables, promotion timelines, MRD, different when my high school kids when my children would be in high school, so that when opportunities were given to me, I could measure them against those criteria. Because again, I go back to the fact that I have not received my number one choice in 12 years. As a matter of fact, 7 of the 8 weren't even on my list. But when I got the phone call, literally would get a phone call, hey, we need you to do this. I could take that option with my spouse, superimpose it, measure it against these objectives, and know if this was the right thing for our family. And I've been very fortunate that they have been. That's what I would say to individual officers and working with your career managers, be candid. As a matter of fact, I have shared my PowerPoint with my career manager. I have given it to him and said, and I've had lots of options. I've got it right here in the studio, and you can see I've got like 6 or 7 different options, different routes that would be consistent with my objectives, my personal and career objectives. So be honest, be candid, be forthright, and give them options. As far as fostering mentoring relationships, I think my advice on that really is for my counterparts and not the younger judge advocates. And I say that because generally I'm a big fan of ADP 622, the leadership manual, but I think their discussion on mentorship falls short. I think that mentorship is more than just career advice and talking to people, as the assignment cycle approaches. I think mentorship is more active and deliberate. It's creating opportunities for people to be able to shine, to identify talented individuals, create opportunities for them to shine, and put them into those positions. And so when you talk about the people who are in positions of authority to do that, well, those are my counterparts. And so I would encourage my counterparts to study mentorship deeply. And a book that I would recommend to them is Athena Rising. This was a book on General Votel's professional reading list when he was the commander of both Special Operations Command and Central Command. It's an excellent book about mentoring and what mentoring means. Now, it specifically focuses on mentoring women, but it talks about the same issues, right? If we define mentoring as identifying talent and creating opportunities for that talent to shine, and the reality is 93% of corporate America CEOs are men. Well, if men don't do that, then you're limiting half the population. You're limiting individuals and their opportunities to reach their potential. And so it's a much more active and deliberate approach to mentoring than just career advice. And I think that we all should read this book. The whole first half of the book is about shifting that mindset to it's more than just being the Oracle of Delphi and providing advice from on high. It's a very active and deliberate effort by those in positions and with authority to make it happen. And then the second half of the book are some practical recommendations. So while Athena Rising does focus on mentoring women and creating opportunities for women, it applies across the board, regardless of race, gender, creed, sexual orientation. It's about expanding opportunities for everyone. And so I'd encourage my counterparts to read that book. And then last, with regards to navigating the assignment cycle, we've talked a little bit about this earlier on, about being candid with your assignments officer. But also understand that there are a lot of variables that go into the assignment cycle, and a lot of them you have no control over, and neither does the JAG Corps. I am in this job as the SJ for CENTCOM because of a decision the Navy made. So my predecessor was supposed to be there for another year, but the Navy decided to pull him out and put him into a different assignment, which created an opening. Otherwise, I'd be somewhere else. We were deep into the assignment cycle, and I was headed somewhere else. And all of a sudden, this opportunity popped up. My point is, lots of factors go into that play, right? Availability, upcoming boards. Senior JAG Corps leaders take this process because, again, I was, as the Chief of Strategic Plans, I had an opportunity to kind of be in the room where it happened, if you will. And I saw this. I don't think they take anything more seriously than the assignment cycle and the assignments of personnel and taking care of personnel. And so they even get down to talk about, if we put this person here, is their senior rater going to have the profile to help them be successful? That level of detail, TJAG and DJAG are getting into that level of detail. So there's lots of factors: senior rater profile limitations, MACP, the Married Army Coupled Program, high school senior stabilization, family health issues. I myself am grateful that the JAG Corps looks deeply into our personal lives because I have a son that's EFMP, and they took that into account in one of my assignments, and I'm grateful for it. Another issue they take into account is, if you've been off the grid, and this is a danger with people who go into the joint assignment, they want to do joint assignment after joint assignment because, frankly, they are very rewarding and fulfilling. But there's a danger in that, and that is that you drop off the radar. And visibility to senior leadership is important. Why? Not because of nepotism or cronyism, but because of trust. Again, it comes back to TJAG and DJAG take this responsibility as sacred. And when they're choosing leaders for the JAG Corps, they want to know that they're choosing people who they can trust, will take care of our most important resource, people, and will develop them and take care of them. And I don't mean, when I say take care of, I don't mean like coddle and I mean that will train them and give them the resources necessary and support them when they do, when life happens and challenge and people experience challenges. So it's about visibility for the purpose of developing trust that you, Keoni, are the kind of guy that I can trust to put into a large legal office and take care of those incredibly important resources. So, that's what I'd say about navigating the assignment cycle. Don't avoid DC because, again, it's an opportunity to not only understand the institution and the larger Army and DoD, but also an opportunity to develop relationships of trust.
Sir, that absolutely resonated very much with me in pursuing those types of assignments, and so I appreciate the reminder of DC is a good place, especially for the organizational trust that is so important within our Corps. For our last question, sir, looking at those judge advocates who do find themselves interested in pursuing national security law opportunities, what is your best advice for them on how to excel in those jobs and those jobs in general? I think I've heard practice of delivery of speed, of also being a problem solver, back to the 3 R's, maybe from your article. Read the towel, it's good. But what's your best advice, sir?
So, I mean, that's a whole separate podcast in and of itself, right? And you're right. There's lots of advice out there, and we've talked a little bit about it. I wanted to hit on something that I think that we don't often talk about, and that is that as judge advocates we wear 2 hats, right? You're a legal advisor, but you're also a staff officer. So learning how to work by, with, and through your teammates on a staff. Because again, as a national security law practitioner, you're going to be a member of an operational staff. ADP 622 defines leadership as an activity of influence. And so in that sense, judge advocates have to be leaders because we're never in positions of formal decision-making authority, right? We are advisors, but we can be leaders in exercising influence across the staff with our commanders when we bring well-reasoned, well-researched arguments to bear on the problems that we're dealing with. And when I say by, with, and through, so for example, right now at US CENTCOM, we are working with GAO and congressional interest on, the last 21 years worth of CIVCAS and, alleged LOAC violations. Well, these are largely operational issues, not legal issues. So how do you exercise informal leadership by, with, and through the J3 to gather the information necessary to have a well-reasoned, well-researched argument regarding how various operations have played out? How do you work by, with, and through the PAO to ensure they have accurate information to represent the command well and be truthful, obviously, and to not split hairs because that doesn't help, right? We have to be candid. We have to be forthright. The American public deserves it. Congress demands it. So again, our ability to exercise influence informally across the staff and empower those staff sections to kind of take a step back and understand the broader perspective, I think that skill set is critical for national security law practitioners. And really it boils down to, again, developing relationships with people, relationships of trust with people on your staff, that they know they know you're right. They know you know what you're talking about. They know you have the organization's interest at heart and that you're there to help solve problems. You mentioned the 3 R's. I don't know if we specifically mentioned them in the TAL article, but the 3 R's that we discussed a lot at Chairman's Legal was to be right, meaning our number one job is to know the rules and the process. There is no substitute for being right. The second R is be responsive. Okay, again, that goes back to that issue of speed. We have to give legal advice at the speed of relevance. Otherwise, we don't add a lot of value to the staff or to the commander. So be right, be relevant, and finally be real. And that real part means understand that life happens, that people are complex individuals, that our solemn responsibility is to help them achieve their fullest potential, and that's different for different people. And people deal with different challenges in life. And you have to be real and authentic in discussing those and in helping people resolve those so that they can find success and fulfillment in their job as a judge advocate. And of course and when I say judge advocate, that applies to all of our teammates. I'm very fortunate. Half my office are civilians. I have several paralegals. So that applies across the board, of course, is helping them all to achieve their full potential.
So I really enjoyed this session with you, getting to hear from you, from your years of experience, some really standout points that I think younger judge advocates, our newest judge advocates coming out of the basic course will really enjoy to get to have that kind of vision for what success looks like and where to also find it within our publications. So we thank you so much for joining us for this third part in our series on national security law and professional development. Sir, I'll leave it to you for any closing comments to our listeners out there.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity. The reality is I have far fewer years ahead of me than I have behind me, right? I have found the JAG Court to be an incredibly rewarding career, largely because of the people and the purpose. And so I would just say to those younger judge advocates who are still in the thick of the knife fight, always focus on the people and the purpose, and you'll never go wrong.
This episode of NSL Unscripted was brought to you by the National Security Law Department at the U.S. Army's The Judge Advocate General's Legal Center and School. The views presented are those of the speakers and do not necessarily represent the views of the Department of Defense or its components, the Department of the Army, or the Judge Advocate General's Legal Center and School. Our department also produces the Operational Law Handbook, accessible online. We hope you have enjoyed this episode and look forward to future episodes for NSL practitioners. Thank you.